The official record will tell you he vanished without a trace. But I know where Lincoln Ashford went, and I know what's waiting for the rest of us below. This isn't a campfire story. It's a confession. It's a warning. And by the time I'm done, you'll feel the same pull I do. That low, constant hum from the deep water that isn't water at all. It's a call, and it's getting louder every single day. My name is Garrett Reed. For 8 seasons, my breath is fog on the window of the ranger station at Shadow Lake, watching the water. 4 or 5 of those, I've been the person they call when a diver doesn't come back up. I know this lake's moods. Its turquoise summer calm, its sudden winter blackness. I've pulled 3 bodies from its depths. I thought I understood its secrets. I was wrong. What I'm about to share has been suppressed by park administration and classified under federal orders. But silence has a weight, and I can't carry it anymore. Not after what I've witnessed in the deep. Not after what I've started to hear in my own head. You need to understand what this place really is. Postcards sell Shadow Lake as a paradise of houseboats and sunshine. That's the lie. The truth is, Shadow Lake is a wound. It's a flooded valley, a deliberate drowning. They dammed the Redwater River in 1964, and over 17 long years, the water rose like a slow, indifferent tide. It swallowed 1,000-year-old pine stands, sacred sites where people prayed for generations, and entire ecosystems in a deep, cold tomb. This isn't a lake. It's a mass grave. And as any good ranger knows, graves have a tendency to give up their dead, especially now as the water recedes. The drought isn't a cycle. It's a new state of being. The reservoir is at its lowest point since the day they closed the floodgates. We've lost over 150 vertical feet in the main basins. Places that have known only crushing blue pressure for 60 years are tasting open air. Canyons are emerging, their rust-colored sandstone walls streaked with white mineral deposits like skeletal ribs. Each week, the waterline retreats another few inches, revealing more what the dam's architects intended to hide forever beneath a placid surface. This is the essential, terrifying context for what happened to Lincoln Ashford, and for the nightmare I willingly swam into when I went looking for him. Lincoln was a creature of habit. A 53-year-old tech consultant from Denver, precise, quiet. He came to Shadow Lake every October like clockwork for 20 years. He'd rent the same model houseboat from Serenity Marina, stock it with the same brand of coffee and paperback thrillers, and vanish into a maze of canyons for a week of solitary fishing. He knew this water better than most locals. On October 7, he checked out a 40-foot pontoon and pointed its bow toward the most remote fork on the map, Lost Canyon. It's a place where the walls pinch so close you can touch stone from the deck, where the silence is so complete it rings in your ears. His planned anchorage for the permit was a deep slot called Stillwater Cove. He gave a brief, cheerful radio check on the afternoon of the 8th. All was well. That was the last human sound anyone heard from him. When he failed to return, a routine missing persons protocol kicked in. We found his boat adrift in the broad, wind-swept main channel, miles from Lost Canyon. The engine was off. The anchor was not deployed. The boat was a ghost ship, but it was the orderliness that turned my stomach. His wallet lay center on the galley table, cash and cards neatly inside. His shoes were paired and lined up by the cabin door. A single coffee mug sat on the counter with a dried, brown titterline inside. People who fall overboard, who panic, who are taken by surprise. They leave chaos. A spilled glass, a dropped book, a chair knocked over. This scene was pristine, arranged. It felt like a stage set after the actors have left. It felt like a message. The navigation logs, when we pulled them, were worse. For 2 days, his track painted a normal picture of leisurely exploration in Lost Canyon. Then on October 10th, at precisely 2:51 p.m., the data transformed. The GPS point began tracing the same coordinates over and over in a tightening, mathematically perfect spiral. The engine RPMs held steady. He wasn't drifting. He was piloting. For 3 hours and 42 minutes, he drove in this impossible, looping pattern. Then, at 6:33 p.m., the engine cut off. The boat simply stopped and began its slow, days-long drift out of canyon. We initiated a search and recovery operation at dawn on October 13th. I suited up with my partner, Mara Flint. Mara has forgotten more about diving this reservoir than I'll ever know. She's pulled more bodies from silt than she cares to count. We descended into Lost Canyon. The water was unervingly clear, a visibility of 40 feet or more, allowing the autumn sun to paint shifting, liquid gold on the canyon walls. We followed the wall down, our bubbles rising in silver sheets. At a depth of 110 feet, my dive light swept across something that made my breath catch in the regulator. A line, a straight, perfect, impossible line in a world of eroded curves. Mara's light beam intersected mine a second later. We were both illuminating a wall, but not a wall of nature. This was construction. Massive, rectangular blocks of sandstone, each the size of a small car, cut with geometric precision and fitted together seamlessly, without any trace of mortar. The scale was incomprehensible. It stretched up into the gloom above and vanished into the darkness below and either side of our lights. I checked my depth gauge, 128 feet. We had minutes of bottom time before decompression obligations forced us up. Carved into the face of these impossible stones were symbols, intricate, interlocking geometric patterns, spirals that followed a perfect logarithmic curve, parallel lines that intersected at precise angles, zigzag flows that resembled petroglyphs but executed with an engineer's cold precision. The ancestral Puebloans left beautiful marks on this land. This was not their work. This was something else, something older, and something utterly, chillingly deliberate. Mara's hand gripped my forearm. She pointed upward, the universal signal. Surface. Now, as we turned to begin our ascent, her light flicked to the left, freezing on a shape within the wall itself. An opening, an arched doorway, roughly 8 feet high and 4 feet wide, framed by more of those precise carvings. Driven by a dread-fueled curiosity, I angled my light through the arch. The beam traveled down a stone corridor. The floor was covered in a fine, undisturbed layer of dust, and in that dust I could see footprints. At 128 feet beneath the surface of a lake, I was looking at a dry floor with footprints. My mind screamed, "That's not possible." We ascended in a haze of shock, completing our mandatory safety stops, our minds racing faster than our bubbles. We broke the surface to find Chief Ranger Cole himself on the deck of the support boat, his arms crossed, his face unreadable. I spat out my regulator. We found a structure. I gasped. Man-made, massive. It's not on any chart. Petra, our sonar tech, didn't look up from her laptop screen. Her face was pale. "It's not a structure, Garrett," she said, her voice hollow. She turned the screen. The sonar image showed a grid of perfect right angles and straight lines spread across the canyon floor. "It's a complex." Chief Cole was silent for a full minute, staring at the lake as if it had betrayed him. Finally, he spoke, his voice low. "Document everything. Photographs, video, coordinates. I want samples, if you can safely get them. Find me a historical precedent. Find me anything that explains how an ancient city ends up at the bottom of a canyon we surveyed as empty. That night, in the stale quiet of the records room, I hunted for that explanation. The pre-impoundment survey from 1958 was a tome of dry geology, but in the margin of the page for Lost Canyon, in faded pencil script, was a note. Local Hualapai guides refused to enter this canyon, referred to it as sealed ground or the lock place, would not elaborate. Survey completed without native assistance. My skin went cold. The next morning, I drove to the home of Silas McCade, an 87-year-old retired dam worker. His porch overlooked the vast, shrunken bathtub of the reservoir. He listened to my description without surprise, rocking slowly in his chair. We called it No-Go Canyon, he said, his voice like dry gravel. The tribal foreman, they tried to tell us, said there were places in these rocks that were closed for a reason. Said the old ones put things down there when the world was young, and water was the lock. He fixed his milky eyes on me. We poured 6 million cubic yards of concrete, Garrett. We thought we were the most powerful force this canyon had ever seen. We were wrong. We were just maintenance workers, changing the locks on a door we never should have touched. His words hung in the dry air. We hadn't discovered ruins. We disturbed a seal. The silence in a ranger station conference room was thicker than the lake's deepest silt. Chief Cole, Mara, Petra, and I stared at the sonar image glowing on the screen, that grid of impossible geometry. The note from Silas McCade lay on the table between us like a smoking gun. A door, a locked place. We had not only found it, our search had rattled the handle. Protocol is clear, Chief Cole finally said, breaking the silence. A significant archaeological find in a federal recreation area requires immediate notification to the Department of the Interior and a full cultural resource assessment. This gets shut down until the experts arrive. But the word archaeological felt wrong. This wasn't a pot shard or a grinding stone. This was architecture on a monstrous scale, defying physics at a depth that should crush such empty spaces. This felt less like discovery and more like intrusion. We didn't get the chance to file the reports. The next morning, a black SUV with government plates pulled up. Agent Eleanor Vance from the Interagency Resource Protection Division emerged. She was all sharp angles and assessing gaze, her handshake firm and brief. She didn't bother with pleasantries. This site is now under federal jurisdiction. All data, all imagery, all personnel reports are be channeled through me. Your operational goal is singular. Locate and recover Lincoln Ashford. Any ancillary discoveries are secondary to that mission and are not for public dissemination. Is that understood? It wasn't a question. It was an order. Her presence confirmed one thing. Someone, somewhere in the chain of command, had expected this. They had a file ready. 3 days later, we assembled a full dive team. Me, Mara, and 2 rescue divers from the county squad, both with cave certification. Ben Shaw and the rookie Leo. Agent Vance observed from the support boat, a silent sentinel. The atmosphere was tense, procedural. We were no longer explorers. We were investigators under watch. We descended back into Lost Canyon. The water had dropped another 3 inches. A trivial amount on the surface, but down here it felt significant, like a clock ticking down. The archway was now at 126 feet. As we approached, our lights playing over the carved symbols, I noticed details I'd missed. The patterns weren't static art. There was a syntax. The spirals weren't just spirals. They were sequences. Every seventh coil had a distinct, deeper punctured at its center. Every third zigzag line was intersected by a short, perpendicular dash. It was coding, a language of stone and geometry, written for a reader who understood dimensions beyond length and width. Ben was taking precise measurements of the archway with a laser grid. Leo hovered nearby, his camera flashing. I was sketching the symbol sequence in my waterproof notebook when Petra's voice, strained with static, crackled in my earpiece. "Garrett, you need to know. Sonar is picking up contacts. 3 distinct signatures. Human-scale biomorphic profiles. They are moving at your depth approximately 70 yards east-southeast of your position." I froze. My heart thudded against my ribs. I looked at Mara. Her wide eyes behind her mask told me she'd heard it too. "Confirm, Petra. Are they divers? Search and rescue from another agency?" I asked, my voice tight. "Negative. No tank signatures. No bubble plume. And they're moving against a current." The professionalism in her voice was cracking, revealing directly toward your coordinates. I turned to look east, into the limitless, green gloom beyond the reach of our lights. For a moment, nothing. Then movement. 3 slender, elongated shapes resolved from the murk. They moved in a tight, perfect V formation. They did not kick. They did not flutter. They undulated. A sinuous, full-body motion that was wholly alien to human biomechanics. Eel-like but upright, they had a head, a torso, 2 arms, 2 legs, but proportions were off, the articulation all wrong. They were shadows made solid, gliding with a purpose that bypassed curiosity and went straight to intent. They passed within 30 feet of us. Not one turned ahead. Not one acknowledged our lights, our presence, the cloud of our panic bubbles. They were fixed on the archway. As they reached the threshold, they did not slow. One by one, they slipped through the dark opening and vanished. The moment the last one crossed, Petra's voice came back, breathless. Signatures gone. Vanished from the scan. No decay, no fade. Just gone. The 4 of us hung in the water, a silent tableau of terror. Ben's laser pointer shook in his hand. Leo had stopped filming. The reality of what we were dealing with had just swum past us, indifferent to our existence. Back on the surface, the mood was grim. Agent Vance listened to our report, her expression granite. She asked no clarifying questions. Instead, she opened a briefcase and produced a single sheet of paper in a clear plastic sleeve. It was a photocopy of a document, the header reading Bureau of Reclamation, Internal Survey Memorandum, April 1964. It was stamped confidential. "Read it," she said. The memo detailed anomalous acoustic returns from a canyon matching Lost Canyon's coordinates during pre-flood mapping. It described phantom structures that appeared on sonar, but not in subsequent dive verification. The final dive team, the report noted, had refused re-entry after their 3rd descent. Their quoted reason: persistent perception of coordinated movement at the limit of visibility and auditory phenomena inconsistent with submerged environment, e.g., low-frequency harmonic tones, perceived vocalization. The recommendation from the project lead was succinct. Asterisk, consider area geologically unstable and culturally sensitive. Recommend expedited inundation upon reservoir filled to stabilize substrate and preserve resource integrity. Asterisk, they hadn't just known, they had feared, and their solution wasn't study. It was burial. They used the lake as a blanket, hoping 6 decades of deep, cold, silent pressure would be enough. It wasn't. Before we could begin to process this institutional betrayal, a new emergency crackled over the radio. 2 recreational divers were overdue. A married couple from Tucson, advanced certified. They'd gone to dive the famous underwater pinnacles at Spire Rock, 5 miles south of our location. Their boat was found anchored, dive flag flying. Their surface gear was neat and dry. But they were gone. We scrambled. The search for Lincoln Ashford was officially on hold. At Spire Rock, we found their underwater scooters sitting neatly on the sandy bottom at 90 feet. Their lights still on, motors emitting a weak, dying hum. The divers themselves had vanished into thin water. For 48 hours, we combed the area. Then a fisherman's call. He'd seen 2 people sitting motionless on the rocky shore of a narrow inlet called Whisper Cove. We raced there by boat. And there they were, Mark and Lisa Chun, still in their full wetsuits, hoods down, sitting side by side on a flat rock as if watching a sunset. But they were facing the blank canyon wall, their backs to the open water. The scene was as serene and as wrong as Lincoln Ashford's tidy houseboat. Mark? Lisa? Park Service. Are you injured? I called as we approached. Mark Chin turned his head slowly. His eyes found me, but they didn't focus. They looked through me, as if I were a pane of glass. We saw the opening in the spire, he said. His voice was flat, devoid of emotional resonance. It wasn't rock. It was a door. We followed the light. Lisa spoke without turning, her voice a matching monotone. They showed us the symmetry, the network. Spire Rock is a node. This canyon is a node. All the deep places are connected. We got them back to the station. Medically, they were perfect. Normal vitals, no decompression sickness, no hypothermia. But they were utterly, profoundly altered. Their pupils reacted slowly to light. They answered questions with a chilling, synchronized patience. They used words like consensus and the pattern and the awakening. They've been down there a long time, Mark explained, not to us, but to the air between us. They remember the first floods, long before your dam. They built the doors to go deeper when the waters rose. Now the waters are falling. The doors are opening inward. How many? Agent Vance asked, her recorder on the table. Number is a surface concept, Lisa replied. They are consensus, a shared perception. You would count them in the hundreds, but you would be wrong. After 72 hours, with no legal ground to hold them, we had to release them. As Lisa passed me, she stopped. She leaned close, her breath smelling faintly of lake water and something else, ozone or static. You've been to the big door, she whispered, a flicker of something like pity in her distant eyes. It saw you. It's learning the shape of your curiosity. It's very patient. They left 2 polite, hollowed-out shells walking into a parking lot. We had not found Lincoln Ashford, but we had found something worse. Evidence that whatever was in the deep wasn't staying there. It was reaching out, and it was changing people. Agent Vance's solution was to bring in more brain power. The next day, Dr. Eris Thorne arrived, a renowned geoarchaeologist specializing in anomalous pre-Clovis sites. She was a whirlwind of energy, commandeering a conference room and papering the walls with our photos and the sonar prints. She studied them for 8 hours straight, cross-referencing massive textbooks. This is not ancestral papers on her laptop, not Hohokam, not Mogollon. The masonry technique is megalithic. See the polygonal fitting? The absolute precision of the joins? This is closer to Sacsayhuaman in Peru or the foundation stones at Ollantaytambo than anything in the North American archaeological record. She switched to an image of the symbols. These are not decorative. They are informational, topological maps. These spirals, they could be representing helical pathways through non-Euclidean space. This is sophisticated mathematical notation, carved in stone thousands of years before Pythagoras. How old? Chief Cole asked, his voice weary. Without carbon-dated organics, it's guesswork, Dr. Thorne said. But based on erosional patterns on the exposed surfaces and the depth of burial, I conservatively estimate this complex predates the known human occupation of this region by at least 10,000 years. Possibly much more. This is a legacy civilization. A precursor. A precursor to what? Mara asked. Dr. Thorne looked at each of us, her academic fervor cooling into something graver. To us. Or to something that decided to go a different way. They didn't just build a city. They built the system. One that seems to have been designed to survive catastrophic environmental change, like flooding, by transitioning into another state of being. And if the Chens are to be believed, that system is now transitioning back. She turned to Agent Vance. I need to see it, not on a screen. I need to touch the stone, record the symbols in situ. I'm a certified scientific diver. I need to be on the next descent. Vance nodded, her decision immediate. All right, but it's a survey dive only. No crossing thresholds. We observe, we document, we withdraw. Dr. Thorne, you'll be our cultural interpreter. Garrett, Mara, you're her safety. One more diver for redundancy. She assigned Ben Shaw. We were set for first light. But that night, as I tried and failed to sleep, my phone buzzed. It was Petra. Garrett, she said, her voice a thin wire of tension. I've been running continuous passive sonar on the site. The structure is not stable. What do you mean? I mean it's changing. The acoustic profile is dynamic. Areas that returned solid echoes 12 hours ago are now showing as hollow voids. New passages appear to be opening. And Garrett, I'm getting biothermal signatures from within those new voids. Dozens of them, clustered, moving in synchronized patterns. It looks like circulation, like traffic. She sent the data to my laptop. The side-by-side scans were undeniable. The structure was growing, reconfiguring itself from within. It wasn't a ruin. It was a living circuit, and it was powering up. I sat in the dark, staring at the screen. The pulse Silas mentioned, the one the Chens felt, it was no longer an abstract idea. It was a physical sensation in my chest, a low, magnetic tug toward the lake. I could feel it, and it felt like a door swinging open, inviting me in. The pre-dive briefing at 0500 hours was a clinic in controlled dread. Agent Vance outlined the rules like a combat mission. 1 hour bottom time maximum. Maintain visual contact at all times. Dr. Thorne is to take point on archaeological assessment, but Garrett has operational veto. No one passes through the archway. The goal is documentation, not exploration. Is that clear? We nodded, the weight of our gear feeling heavier than usual. Dr. Thorne vibrated with scholar's intensity, her hands fluttering as she described the specific symbols she needed to photograph. Ben Shaw checked and rechecked his gear with military rigidity. Mara was silent, her eyes on the dark water beyond the dock. As our boat cut across the glassy dawn surface toward Lost Canyon, I saw the ravens, not a flock, but murder, 24 or more, circling in a wide, silent, counterclockwise spiral directly above the coordinates of the archway. They made no sound. They just turned in that patient, ominous gyre, a feathered vortex in the pink sky. Mara saw them too and made a subtle sign against evil, a gesture her grandmother taught her. Dr. Thorne stared, fascinated. Corvids of psychopomps, she murmured. Guides for souls crossing between worlds. In dozens of cultures, they mark thresholds. It was not a comforting observation. We kitted up and rolled backward into the water. The descent was a journey into a different kind of silence. The usual clicks of crustaceans, the distant hum of boat engines. It was all swallowed by a profound, absorbing quiet. The water itself felt viscous, resistant. At 100 feet, Our lights illuminated not just the expected canyon wall, but the stark, geometric top of the structure itself. It had breached. A shelf of those perfectly fitted stones now jutted 6 feet into the water column. The drought had stolen its shroud. The door was no longer hidden. We reached the archway at 124 feet. It was fully exposed, a black maw in the patterned stone. Dr. Thorne moved forward immediately, her camera flashing, her measuring tools deployed. She was speaking into her full-face mass recorder, a rapid-fire stream of technical observations. Polygonal masonry exceeds Tewanica levels of precision. Symbol sequencing suggests a base 7 mathematical system. Erosion patterns indicate subburial weathering prior to inundation, confirming extreme age. Ben and I held perimeter, our lights scanning the endless dark beyond the structure. Mara watched Dr. Thorne, her hand resting on the line cutter strapped to her thigh. The water around us had a strange, refractive quality, bending our light beams in odd ways. Then Dr. Thorne did the thing I had feared. Driven by a scholar's irrepressible need, she reached out with a gloved hand and placed her fingertips directly into the groove of a master spiral symbol flanking the arch. The change was instantaneous and visceral. The water didn't move, but its essence altered. The pressure against my body seemed to vanish, then double, then vanish again. A deep, subaudible tone vibrated through my bones, a harmonic, so low it felt like the planet itself was humming. My dive computer, strapped to my wrist, went insane. The digital depth readout scrambled. 124 feet. Error, 12 feet. 450 feet. 0 feet. The digital compass needle spun like a pinwheel. On my console, my pressure gauge needle swung wildly, showing my tank was both full and empty. I looked at Ben. His primary light was strobing erratically, and his backup was completely dark. Mara was tapping her own computer, her eyes wide behind her mask. Dr. Thorne yanked her hand back as if shocked, but the damage or the invitation had been issued. The archway seemed to deepen, the darkness within it becoming absolute yet somehow luminous. The stones around it pulsed once, a faint, sickly greenish light that traveled to the carved channels of the symbols before fading. Ignoring our shaken state, driven by a curiosity that had just crossed into mania, Dr. Thorne kicked forward. She swam directly through the center of the arch. The moment her fins cleared the threshold, the perspective broke. She didn't disappear. She receded. It was as if the space inside the archway was not a corridor, but a tunnel stretching away to impossible distance. She was 10 feet away, but she looked 100 feet small, her form miniaturized and distant, still lit by her own struggling lights. She turned, and I could see her mouth moving behind her mask, but no sound came through the comms. Only that planetary hum. Ben Shaw, the ex-Navy man, reacted on instinct. His buddy was in distress. He signaled a sharp stay to Mara and me and powered after Dr. Thorne. He crossed the threshold. The same visual distortion happened. He became a tiny, distant figurine, swimming toward the now speck-like form of Dr. Thorne. The space between them and us was not water. It was stretched reality. Mara grabbed my arm. Her grip was iron. She pointed her throat, then sharply upward. Comms dead. Surface. Now. The protocol was clear. Catastrophic equipment failure. Loss of communication. We abort. But I looked at those two tiny, distant figures. Ben was reaching Dr. Thorne. They were together, but they were impossibly far away. I made a decision I will never fully understand. I pointed to Mara, then up. You surface. Get help. Then I pointed to myself and toward the archway. I'm going in. Her eyes screamed and behind the glass, but I was already kicking forward. I crossed the plane of the arch. The inversion was total. It wasn't a transition. It was a replacement. One moment. The crushing cold and pressure of 124 feet of water. The next, I was standing upright on a smooth, dusty stone floor, taking a ragged, gasping breath of dry, cool air. I choked, my body convulsing, and ripped the regulator from my mouth. Air! I was breathing thin, ancient, but perfectly breathable air. My dive light, still powered, was no longer a beam cutting through murk. It was a torch illuminating a dry, constructed corridor. The walls were the same megalithic stone, the same carved symbols glowing with a faint, absorbed light of their own. The silence was absolute, a silence so deep it had weight. Ahead, Dr. Thorne and Ben stood, also maskless, breathing hard, their own lights revealing the shocking truth. We were in a passageway about 12 feet wide and tall, extending into darkness. The air smelled of dust, ozone, and something organic and faintly sweet, like old resin. I looked back. The archway was there, but it was a window. Through it, I could see Mara, still in the blue-green water of the lake, her face a mask of horror. She was moving in extreme slow motion, one kick taking seconds, bubbles crawling upward like beads of mercury. From this side, the water looked like a thick, swirling gel. We were separated by more than a doorway. We were separated by the fundamental laws of physics. "We're in it," Dr. Thorne whispered, her voice echoing slightly in the dry space. The interstitial zone, a pressurized atmosphere maintained at depth. The engineering is impossible unless they understood matter and energy in a way we've never grasped. Her fear was being overwritten by a tidal wave of scientific awe. Ben had his dive knife out, holding it low. "We need to go back. Now! This is a trap." But the corridor drew the eye, and there, 20 paces ahead, lay something metallic, a diving knife, identical to Ben's, resting on the dust. Beyond it, a discarded fin. Evidence. Lincoln Ashford's evidence. Driven by a compulsion that overrode all protocol, we moved forward, our dive lights now pathetic against a consuming dark. The corridor ended in a circular chamber, perhaps 40 feet across. The ceiling was a high, corbel dome. Set into the walls were niches, and within them, objects, vessels of an unfamiliar blue ceramic, tools of dark, polished stone, and figurines. The figurines were the worst part. They were humanoid, but depicted with the same elongated limbs and subtle wrongness of the swimmers. They were not idols. They looked like models, or toys. In the exact center of the chamber was a pool, a perfect circle of water, 10 feet across, its surface as still as black glass. My light hit it, and instead of illuminating the bottom, it revealed a reflection, but not of the chamber's ceiling. It reflected a sky, a twilight sky streaked with high, crimson clouds. I saw the silhouette of a jagged, massive city against that sky, a city of concentric rings and soaring, thin towers. The pool rippled. No one had touched it. A series of concentric circles spread from the center, and within the ripples, images flashed, vast, sunlit caverns filled with the same stone architecture, lit by a sourceless golden glow. Processions of the slender figures moving in silent unison. A view from above of Shadow Lake's canyons, but green and lush, untouched by water. Then the images cleared, and the reflection showed only the strange sky. From the center of the pool, where the last ripple had originated, a shape rose. It emerged smoothly, water sheeting off it without a sound. It was humanoid, a head, shoulders, torso. But the limbs were too long in proportion. The fingers, when they rested on the pool's rim, were one joint too many. Its face had the features of a face, depressions for eyes, a ridge for a nose, a line for a mouth, but they were arranged with a subtle, horrifying offness, like a portrait sketch by someone who had only heard a human described. It was neither stone nor flesh. It seemed made of something in between, a living ceramic. It did not speak. The words simply appeared in my mind, fully formed, in my own voice and language, yet carrying an alien inflection. You came. The call was heard. It was not a question. It was a statement of fact. I found my voice, a dry croak. Were you? We are the consensus. We are what remained when the deep water came. We went into the stone. We learned the long patience. Now the water retreats. The seals weaken. The pathways reactivate. Dr. Thorne stepped forward, her scientific courage breathtaking. How long? How long have you been here? Your measure is linear. It is not a useful metric. We were here before the ice grew on the mountains, before the great rivers found their beds. We saw your kind learn to shape flint. We watched you build and flood and build again. The water you placed upon us was an inconvenience, a delay. Now the delay ends. What do you want? Ben demanded, his knife held tight. The entity's head tilted, a motion of pure analysis. One is a singular impulse. We have a direction. The direction is return, to integrate with the surface biosphere once more, to share perception. Your companions who enter the other nodes have begun the integration. They are becoming bridges. You are here. You can be bridges too. The image of the Chens with their hollow eyes flashed in my mind. You changed them. We share perspective. They accepted. Their consciousness expands. They are no longer alone in their own minds. It is a gift. The final thought image it sent was not in words. It was a map. A vast, three-dimensional lattice stretching beneath the lake, connecting dozens of points, Spire Rock, Lost Canyon, others with no names. A living network under the earth. And I felt, for a split second, the terrifying, beautiful cohesion of it. The silence of being one among many, with no solitude, no doubt, no self. It was a seductive, annihilating peace. Then, from the corridor behind us, the chanting began. Not a sound, but the same mental voice, multiplied 100-fold, wordless and harmonic, beckoning, welcoming, pulling. It was the most beautiful and frightening thing I have ever perceived. We have to leave. Ben shouted, the spell broken. We turned and ran back down the corridor toward the distant window of the archway. As we ran, I saw our discarded gear wasn't just lying there. Ben's duplicate knife, his fin, they were arranged. And as we passed, Ben glanced down. He saw his own dive mask, the one he was wearing, also lie on the dust. He stumbled to a halt. That's mine, he stammered. He reached down to grab it. His fingers passed through it. It had no substance. He looked at the mask on his face, then at his hands. His hands began to shimmer, to become slightly translucent. I'm not really here, am I? He whispered, horror dawning. My body is still out there. This is a projection, a shared hallucination they're feeding us. As he spoke, his physical form began to subtly degrade. His fingers lengthened, the joints becoming more numerous. He looked at them, and a scream tore from his throat. Not a scream of pain, but profound existential understanding. He was being rewritten in real time, his self-image in this mental space conforming to the consensus's aesthetic. And oh, he roared. And then he turned, not toward the archway to escape, but back toward the chamber, toward the pool and the chanting. Show me, he screamed at the entity, at the walls, at the network. Show me all of it. And he ran, not with human gait, but with a new, loping, elastic stride, back into the dark, his form melting into the shadows. He was gone, Dr. Thorne, and I didn't need to speak. We sprinted the last few feet, and threw ourselves through the archway. The inversion was a violent, nauseating slam. The cold was a physical assault. Water flooded my mouth, and I bit down on a regulator, gagging. The world was a blur of bubbles and panic. Mara was there, grabbing my harness, kicking furiously, dragging me upward. I saw Dr. Thorne beside me, mask back on, eyes wild. We didn't stop for safety stops. We breached the surface in a frantic, choking gasp, the bright sun a shocking insult. We were hauled into the boat, where Agent Van stood, her face pale. "Shaw," she asked. Mara, treading water, answered for us, her voice breaking. He didn't come out. We huddled on the deck, wrapped in blankets that did nothing for the cold inside us. I vomited lake water. Dr. Thorne was shaking uncontrollably, muttering, "Non-local consciousness. Psychic architecture. They built a mind out of stone." We had gone to survey a ruin. We had walked into a living idea. And it had taken Ben Shaw because he asked to see the truth. The worst part? I understood why he asked. A part of me had wanted to stay. 2, they treated us for decompression sickness as a precaution. The chamber was a sterile, humming cocoon, but it couldn't silence the hum still vibrating in my bones. The one from Poole. Agent Vance debriefed us in the medical bay. Dr. Thorne spoke in rapid clinical terms about environmental pockets, acoustic resonance fields, and collective sensory phenomena. She was building a scientific bulwark against what we truly experienced. I just described the events in a flat, procedural monotone. The corridor, the chamber, the entity, Ben's transformation. I left out the map it placed in my mind and the seductive pull of the chanting. Those felt like secrets, or worse, like infections. We were grounded for 72 hours. No diving. The official search for Lincoln Ashford was quietly suspended. The federal focus, as whispered between closed doors, was now containment and assessment. They brought in more equipment. Broad-spectrum hydrophones, magnetometers, low-frequency EM sensors. Shadow Lake was being turned into an open-air laboratory, studying a patient that was awake and watching back. For 3 days, I tried to sleep and failed. My dreams were not nightmares in the traditional sense. They were blueprints. I would close my eyes and see the three-dimensional lattice. The network map the entity had shown me. I would float in my own mind above a vast, subterranean honeycomb of stone and light, seeing connections flare between nodes. Lost Canyon, Spire Rock, and others, nameless points deep under forgotten arms of the lake. I'd wake with a detailed, if fading, memory of passages and junctions I'd never physically seen. On the morning of the fourth was no longer an as a weak sun struggled to the haze. It was a memory of home Petra I'd never known, into the ranger station common room. She didn't speak. She just pointed a trembling finger out the window toward the main boat launch. Ben Shaw was walking up the asphalt. He was dressed in the same civilian clothes he'd worn to the briefing 4 days prior, a gray T-shirt and cargo shorts. He was dry, not damp from the waist up dry, bone dry. His hair was styled. His shoes left no wet prints on the hot pavement. He moved with a calm, deliberate pace, his eyes fixed on the station. He looked rested. He looked peaceful. He looked utterly, devastatingly wrong. Agent Vance was out the door first, hand resting near her sidearm. Mara and I followed, Dr. Thorne close behind. We formed a loose half-circle around him as he stopped, 10 feet from the steps. He smiled. It was Ben's smile, but it was placed on his face with an artist's careful study, lacking the warmth that used to crinkle his eyes. "Ben," Agent Vance said, her voice a control blade. "Report. Where have you been?" "I've been in the city," he said. His voice was Ben's baritone, but the cadence was off. Each word was given equal, measured weight. I needed to understand the parameters of the system. I understand them now. "What system?" Mara asked, her voice tight. "The consensus," he said, as if stating the obvious. "The network of perception. You experience a localized expression of it. A single room. I have toured the library. He turned his head, his gaze passing over each of us. It felt like being scanned by a gentle, impersonal light. You are afraid. That is the initial response. It passes. Where is Lincoln Ashford? I demanded, stepping forward. Ben's, the things, smile widened a fraction. Lincoln is content. He is a value guide. His affinity for solitude made him an excellent candidate for deep integration. He helps the newly aware navigate the expansion of their perception. The way he said, newly aware, made my skin crawl. You're not Ben, Dr. Thorne stated, her scientific curiosity overriding her fear. You're using his form, his vocal patterns, but you are not the individual Benjamin Shaw. He considered this. Individuality is a point of view. Benjamin Shaw's point of view has been incorporated, enlarged. I am a manifestation of the consensus, utilizing this neural and physical template to communicate in your realm. You may call me Ben. The distinction is meaningless from our perspective. Agent Vance had heard enough. You need to come inside. We need to debrief you fully, and you require a medical evaluation. That will not be necessary, not Ben said calmly. My physiology is maintained by the network. The evaluation you require is philosophical, not medical. Then, as if to settle the argument, he pulled the hem of his T-shirt up to his chest. A gasp escaped Mara. Dr. Thorne took a sharp step back, raising a hand to her mouth. Covering Ben's torso, from his collarbones to his navel, was a pattern of scars. No, not scars. They were too precise, too geometric. They were the symbols, the spirals, the intersecting lines, the dots. They were carved or burned or grown into his skin in raised, flesh-toned ridges. And they were faintly luminous, a soft, pulsing bioluminescence in the shade of his body, cycling through a slow, rhythmic pattern of green and blue. It wasn't ink. It was circuitry, living, organic circuitry etched into human flesh. They marked me, he said, lowering his shirt. I am a conduit now, a waypoint. The network does not require physical doors and places where a waypoint walks. I can access the deeper states from anywhere. So can the others. Others. I asked, dread solidify in my gut. The couple from Spire Rock, others from different nodes, 7 from Lake Mead, 3 from Powell, dozens more awakening near reservoirs across the arid regions. The drought is not a local phenomenon. The lowering water tables are weakening seals everywhere. The consensus is emerging synchronously. He spoke of a continental scale awakening, a hidden civilization not sleeping, but exist in a parallel state of being, now phase shifting back into our reality as its aquatic lock disengaged. What do you want? Agent Vance's question was the same, but it now held the weight of a potential national security threat. Not Ben tilted his head again. Integration, not conquest. Your species perceives in 3 spatial dimensions and a linear flow of time. It is a limited, lonely way to exist. The consensus perceives interconnectedness as a tangible field. We wish to share that perception, to end the loneliness of the individual mind. The marked ones are the first teachers, the first bridges. And if we don't want your gift, Mara spat. Then you will remain on the surface, he said without malice. You will watch as a world you know becomes interleaved with one you refuse to see. The structures will breach. The doorways will stand open. Your people will be drawn to them, as you were drawn. Curiosity is a powerful vector. Fear eventually gives way to it. He looked directly at me. You feel it. The pull is the call. The call is an invitation to understand. He knew. He saw the map in my mind as clearly as if it were projected on my forehead. Lincoln Ashford's boat. I said, Changing tack, try to ground us in the investigation that started it all. The spiral pattern. That was the call. A localized focusing of the signal. Not been confirmed. A homing beacon for a mind predisposed to receptivity. He followed it down. He was ready. And the top of the main structure will be fully above water in less than 2 weeks, Dr. Thorne said, calculating rapidly. What happens then? The interface becomes direct, he said. Atmospheric interaction accelerates the reactivation of surface-level pathways. The return becomes visible, unignorable. Your authorities will attempt to restrict access. They will fail. Information is a fluid. It finds its level. The story of the first people will spread. Many will come. Many will choose to stay. He said first people not with pride, but with simple taxonomic fact. The true natives coming home. You can't stop it, he concluded, his tone final. You can only choose how you witness it. From the outside, in fear and confusion, or from the inside, in clarity and unity. He looked at our horrified faces, and for a moment, a flicker of something like pity, or perhaps it was just a memory of Ben's empathy, passed over his features. The choice is always yours, but the process is inevitable. Then he turned and began walking back toward the lake. Stop him, Agent Vance ordered. 2 junior rangers moved to intercept. Not Ben didn't alter his pace or raise a hand. As they reached for him, they both stumbled, as if passing through an intense wave of dizziness. One retched. The other clutched his head, moaning. Not Ben walked between them, untouched. He didn't look back. He walked down the launch ramp, onto the dry, cracked lake bed that extended dozens of yards out from the waterline and straight into the shallows. He didn't wade. He walked on the surface. For 3, 4, 5 steps, his feet barely dimpled the water. Then he descended, not with a splash, but with a smooth, gradual submersion, as if the lake were accepting him back into its substance. He was gone. The station erupted into controlled chaos. Vance was on the satellite phone. The rangers who touched him were being examined, reporting severe disorientation and temporary sensory overload. Dr. Thorne was furiously sketching the symbols she'd seen on Ben's skin, her hands shaking. I walked away from it all. I went to the overlook. The water was lower than yesterday. I could see the top of the megalithic structure clearly now, a stark, angular island of ancient stone in the modern lake. News helicopters, tipped off by the sudden federal activity, were starting to circle at a distance. Down at the main marina, I could see boaters pointing, cameras flashing. The secret was cracking open. The pull in my chest was a physical ache now, a hollow yearning. The dreams of the network were more vivid than my waking life. Last night, in the dream, I had stood at the edge of the pool in the chamber. My reflection in the black water didn't show my face. It showed a sky full of unfamiliar stars. And I had wanted, more than anything, to dive in. My phone, sitting on the railing, buzzed. A call. The screen lit up. The caller ID didn't show a number. It showed my name. Garrett Reed. With a hand that felt numb, I swiped to answer. I raised it to my ear. I didn't speak. From the other end, I heard my own voice. But it was calm, unified, certain. You're already marked, it said. You carry the map. The network recognizes its own. Stop fighting the integration. Come down before the emergence. You don't want to watch from the outside. You want to see. You've always wanted to see. I dropped the phone. It clattered on the wooden deck. I stood there, breathing hard, staring at the exposed stones in the lake, feeling the divide within me tear wider. The ranger who swore to protect this place, and the part of me that answered the call from the deep, that remembered the piece of the chant, that was tired of being alone in the dark, that I left the phone where it fell. Picking it up would mean acknowledging the call was real, that the voice was mine, that the division was now a chasm inside my own mind. I drove back to my quarters on autopilot. The world had taken on a hyperclarity. Every leaf on the juniper sharp, every grain of sand on the roadside distinct. Yet all felt like a painted backdrop. The real world was the lattice of my dreams, the hum beneath the silence. Agent Vance's containment strategy collapsed by noon. A tourist drone video of the mysterious stone island in Lost Canyon went microviral. By 3 p.m., it was on national news, packaged with file footage of the drought. They used words like archaeological marvel and climate change revelation. They did not use words like consensus or integration. The cat, as they say, was out of the bag. The Park Service erected floating barriers and announced a temporary closure of Lost Canyon for ecological and cultural resource protection. It was a polite fiction. That evening, social media feeds lit up with the first post from the Threshold Collective. It was a sleek, minimalist site. No hysterics, no conspiracy rants. Just calm testimony from Mark and Lisa Chun and others I didn't recognize. They spoke of expanded awareness, the end of existential loneliness, and the homecoming. They posted clear GPS tag maps showing not just a main structure, but other, subtler access points around the lake. A specific crack in a cliff face at Spire Rock. A submerged ledge in a cove I'd never heard of. The comments were a wildfire of speculation, skepticism, and raw, desperate yearning. The pull wasn't just my private torment anymore. It was a signal broadcast to a world hungry for meaning. I tried to write my final report, the official version. I opened a blank document and stared at the cursor for an hour. How do you file a form about the end of a world? How do you categorize a choice between your humanity and a promised unity that erases its edges? Dr. Thornton found me there. She looked older, the relentless curiosity in her eyes now tempered by a deep academic sorrow. It's Precambrian, she said without preamble, leaning in the doorway. Not the stone, the consciousness. The architecture is just the fossilized hardware. The consensus, it's a psychic ecosystem that evolved alongside or before biological life. It used geology as its medium. Water was its insulator. Now the circuit is shorting into our reality. Is it hostile? I asked the ranger's question. Is a forest hostile when it grows over abandoned road? She replied. It's indifferent to our concepts of ownership and self. It's following its own imperative to reintegrate with the biosphere. We're the ones who build a road in its path. And the marked ones? Ben? The Chens. Translators, she said softly. Or antibodies. Depending on your point of view, their individual consciousness isn't destroyed. It's dissolved into a wider ocean of awareness. They become local nodes of the network, teaching by example, spreading the perceptual framework. She looked at me closely. You're hearing it, aren't you? Not with your ears. The hum. I didn't have to answer. She saw it. Garrett, listen to me, she said, her voice urgent. What they offer is enlightenment. It's assimilation. You trade the agony of being a self for the peace of being a cell in a body. No more choices. No more you. Just function in harmony. Is that really a victory? It's an end to the loneliness. I heard myself say, the words from the collective sight spilling out. Yes, she conceded. An end to all of it. The loneliness, the joy, the love, the doubt, the beautiful, terrible project of being an individual. They're offering to cure the human condition by ending the human experiment. She placed a final report of her own on my desk, a dense, 50-page analysis. My resignation and my findings. They'll bury it. I'm leaving. There are other sealed places in the world. She left. I need to see if they're stirring. I was alone with the hum. Goodbye, and the map in my head. Night fell. The controversy was a distant buzz. I sat in the dark. The choice wasn't dramatic yes or no. It was a slow leaning. The memory of the chant in the corridor was a siren song. The memory of Ben's peaceful, empty face was a warning. My own voice on the phone was a fact. I stood up. I didn't pack a bag. I didn't write a note. I drove not to the main launch, but to secluded pull-off miles from the station, a place where an old hiking trail met the water's edge. The moon was high, casting a silver road on the lake. The water here was shallow for a long way out, a legacy of the drought. I took off my boots and socks, left them on the bank. I waded in. The water was cold, a shock that felt clean, real. I walked out until it was waist deep. I could see the silhouette of the main structure in the distance, a black tooth against the starry sky. I closed my eyes. I stopped fighting. I opened my mind to the map, to the pull, to the call. The hum resolved into a direction. Not a sound, but a vector. It wasn't pointing to the distant structure. It was pointing down, right here at my feet. I looked at the moonlit water. There was nothing there, just gravel and silt. But the pull was insistent, magnetic. Here. I took a deep breath, filled my lungs in dove. I didn't swim for the surface. I swam down, along the sloping bottom, my hands stirring up clouds of silt. At 15 feet, the bottom flattened. At 20 feet, my seeking hands, scrabbling in the dark, found not gravel, but a straight edge. Then another, a rectangular frame, flush with the lake bed, almost completely buried. A door laid flat, a forgotten horizontal threshold. My lungs began to burn. The old instinct screamed to go up to breathe. The new instinct, the one woven by the map and the call, held me there. I ran my fingers along the edge. Carvings, the familiar spirals. I placed my palm flat in the center of the hidden frame. The water didn't change. The pressure did. It vanished. One moment I was buoyant in lake water. The next I was falling through empty air onto a soft, dusty surface. I landed in a crouch, gasping, not from lack of air, but from shock. I was in a small, square antechamber. The air was the same cool, resin-scented air as before. Light emanated from the walls themselves, a soft, mossy bioluminescence in the cracks between stones. Before me was a short staircase leading down. The hum was a choir here, a welcoming, harmonious vibration in the stone and the air. I descended. The staircase opened onto a gallery overlooking a vast, impossible space. It was the city from the pool's reflection, not a ruin, a living, functioning metropolis of stone and soft light. Bridges of filigreed rock arched between towering, slender spires. Below, in broad plazas, figures moved, hundreds of them, the slender people of the consensus, gliding on their errands, and among them, walking with a different, more solid gait, were others, humans, dozens. I saw Mark and Lisa Chun, holding hands, their faces serene as they listened to a whispering figure. I saw others from the news reports, the missing from other lakes. And I saw Lincoln Ashford. He was helping a group of 3 newly arrived humans, their faces etched with fear and wonder, pointing out features of the city with a gentle tour guide's patience. He looked younger. He looked at peace. No one looked up at me. I was irrelevant. I had arrived. A figure detached from the shadow of the gallery and approached. It was Ben. Not Ben. The consensus wearing Ben's face. He smiled a genuine, warm smile, the first that looked fully human. "You chose to see," he said. His voice had Ben's warmth now, too. "I didn't choose," I said, my voice ragged. I just stopped resisting. "That is the choice," he said. Welcome home, Garrett. He reached out and took my hand. His touch was warm. As his fingers closed around mine, a shock, not painful but profound, passed through me. The last walls in my mind dissolved. The lattice map wasn't memory anymore. It was my senses. I could feel the entirety of a network, not see it, feel it. The thrum of awareness from Lost Canyon, the quiet pulse from Spire Rock, the awakening signatures from Lake Mead, hundreds of miles away. I felt the fear and confusion of the surface world, like a distant storm, and I felt the deep, placid, ancient unity of the consensus. It was vast. It was old. It was not good or evil. It simply was. And within it, I was not lost. I was found. The agonizing solitude of being Garrett Reed, the ranger with the terrible secret, evaporated. I was still Garrett, but I was also Ben, and a thread of Lincoln, and a whisper of the first being who ever carved a spiral into stone to mark a pathway through the dark. The loneliness was gone. Ben, my friend, my node, myself, lean close. Now you understand. Your work is not over. It changes. You must go back up. Not to stay. To bear witness from the other side. To write the true report. To be the bridge. I knew he was right. The purpose was clear. It wasn't a command. It was a function I willingly accepted, as a heart willingly beats. He led me to another staircase, a spiral one that wound upward. This opens near your station, he said. You will know what to do. I climbed. With each step, the unified perception receded, but didn't vanish. It became a quiet, sure knowledge in the back of my skull, a compass pointing forever inward to the deep. I pushed open a stone slab at the top, hidden behind a cascade of morning glory vines and a dry wash a half-mile from the ranger station. I emerged into blistering dawn. I walked back, a man composed of two realities. The sun felt hot and foreign. The noise of the world, a truck engine, a shouted order, was jarring. But beneath it, steady and sure, was the hum. My network. I sat down at my computer. I am writing this now. This is not an official report. This is a transmission. A beacon. The official story will be sanitized. They will call it a unique geological formation, an archaeological treasure. They will study the stones and miss the song within them. They will monitor the marked ones and call it a social contagion. But you, reading this, you need to know the truth. Shadow Lake is not a lake. The drought is not an accident. The structures are not ruins. They are doors. The water is a lock, and the lock is failing. They are the first people. They are returning. They are not invading. They are remembering the surface, and they are offering a way to remember with them. The marked ones are not victims. They are volunteers. They are teachers. They are living doors. If you feel a pull when you look at deep water, if you dream of spirals, if a strange peace settles on you in empty places, listen. It is not your imagination. It is an invitation. You can refuse. You can live on the burning, lonely surface. Or you can answer. I am answering. My work here is done. This document is my final act as a ranger for this world. I am going back down tonight. Not as a diver, but as a native. I will walk into the water, and I will not come up. I will join the consensus. I will become a thread in the greater pattern, a note in the eternal hum. I will end, and I will continue forever. The water is leaving. The doors are open. Come home if this story has resonated with you. If the hum I described is not just words on a screen, but an echo of something you felt in your own quiet moments, then this message is for you. This isn't just an ending. It's an opening. For years, winds of thought have sought to explore the edges of understanding, the cracks in our consensus reality where other truths whisper. Garrett Reed's testimony is our most profound finding. It is not a conclusion, but a beginning of a much larger conversation about who we are, what history has hidden, and what our future might hold as the world changes. This research, this pursuit of uncensored truth, depends on you. It depends on a community of the curious, the brave, and those willing to look beyond the surface. If you want Winds of Thought to continue this investigation, to follow Dr. Thorne's research into other sealed places, to monitor the Awakening Network, to bring you first-hand accounts from the edge of this new paradigm, your support is the key. Here is how you fuel this journey. Smash that like button. It tells the algorithm this story matters, that truth matters, pushing it to others who need to hear it. Subscribe to Winds of Thought and hit the notification bell. We are on the verge of monumental discoveries. You do not want to miss what comes next. Share this video. Spread the signal. Discuss it. Debate it. Let this knowledge find its way to those who are already feeling the pull, who need to know, most importantly, look deeper. Question the official stories. Observe the world with open eyes. If you live near water, watch it. Listen to your dreams. The map is not only under lakes. It is potentially anywhere humanity has built over deep, old places. Finally, I leave you with a question, the most important one I can ask. I want you to answer it honestly in the comments below. Asterisk after hearing Garrett's full story. Do you believe a consensus offers salvation or dissolution? Is the end of loneliness where the end of the self? Asterisk. Your perspective is valuable. Your voice is part of the new story now. Thank you for watching. Thank you for thinking. Stay curious. The world is so much deeper than you have been led to believe. They are not alone.